All right, y'all. So we are back with another one today. Today's job is going to be hopefully relatively easy. Um, there's only one thing that I'm really thinking about that's going to give me some trouble, but I'll tell you all about that in a second. But what we're going to be doing today is actually changing out the exhaust. So right now on the car, what I have is one of those HKS replicas. I don't know which specific brand it is, or if it's even just maybe one of those generic eBay reps. But it's one of those HKS reps that, pretty much looks like this. Now, there's nothing wrong with this exhaust. It's in pretty decent condition. The wide pipe and everything is pretty good, so a friend of mine is actually just going to buy it off of me when I get this one off. But I actually was at the junkyard a couple weeks ago and found another exhaust at the Pick Your Parts that I got for like a fraction of what it's actually worth. So I'm actually gonna go that route and install that on the car. The piping is supposed to be larger, if I'm not mistaken. The HKS rep is probably 2.5, maybe no more than 2 and 3/4 in diameter. This one has a 3-inch mid pipe that comes, I believe it comes back down at the rear split because it is a dual. It comes back down to 2 1/4, but it's supposed to get better flow. I'm hoping for maybe a better sound out of it. I know that a lot of people, disappearing. I know that a lot of people don't really like the trumpet sound of a VQ, but it is a VQ, and I actually kind of like that distinct sound. I think it's not a talking point, but it's an important part of the car. It's just something that's known for. And actually, I was in Colorado not too long ago and drove my friend's car, and he's got like the absolute trumpet sound coming out of his thing. I think he's got like a full ISR exhaust, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, let's take a look at what I found. All right, so what we've got here is a Z1 dual M-spec exhaust. So it's the one that's got the double exhaust tips that look like this. They have a touring version as well, but this one's an M-spec. What I'm gonna do right now is go ahead and actually clean this up because it's got pretty good amount of dirt on it. So I just want to clean it up while it's out and it's easier to clean. And then after that, I'm gonna go ahead and get the rear end of the car up on ramps. That should make it easier for me to get under. And it should still lift the midsection of the car high enough for me to be able to get the wide pipe off. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and do that, get this thing installed, and I'm really curious to see what this thing sounds like. But that is today's goal, that's today's task, is to get this thing on the car, make sure there's no leaks, because obviously there's plenty of points for this thing to leak at, and just make sure that the tips are also aligned pretty well in the rear. The car that I found it on was a G35 coupe, so I know it fits. However, the way that they had it installed in the car, the tips were kind of angled outward, not like straight back, but like slanted. I'd like to avoid that if I can. I prefer the straight back look, but we'll see either way. The slanted look can look a little aggressive, but I prefer just a straight fit. So let's see what we can do with this. Alright, so I actually went as far as pulling out the metal polish because I thought I was really gonna have to like buff these things. Pause. But soapy water rag got like 90% of what was on here off. It's mostly just like surface dirt, probably from sitting over the sand in the junkyard. So you can see like how it looked versus how it is. This is the one I haven't cleaned yet. Versus the one that I just wiped down. So they're not too bad at all. They still have the silencers or mufflers in them. So I have my fingers crossed. I'm kind of hoping high that the person who had these before on their car probably wasn't really beating the hell out of the car. Okay, so right now we've got the car up in the air on ramps. I have it aired up as high as I can get it right now. And then I have the jack holding, trying to give some support from the diff, just because I don't really have that much room to put jack stands in, and I don't want to jack it up too much higher. So what we're gonna do now is get under the car and start taking off the old exhaust. The car is up high enough to where I can still reach under there to get the Y pipe off and disconnect it. And then from the back we'll come in under here and get the midsection disconnected and just start taking everything apart. We can take our time with this, there's no rush, but we'll get this off and then we'll start bringing in the Z1 exhaust from over there and start getting it on the hangers, which are probably, that's what I was mentioning earlier, it's probably the one part that's going to give me the biggest headache, is just getting those stupid rubber hangers off. But yeah, we'll throw some like multi-purpose lube or something on it and see if we can't get them to slide off a little bit easier. But I'm gonna go ahead and start loosening all these bolts and getting this out. All right, so far I've been able to get the rear section off. I was hoping that I could kind of take this out as one piece, but this little hump right here that you see, it actually goes over the rear sway bar. So it kind of crisscrosses over this side, but under this side. So I had to separate this to get it out. So the only thing left to do now is to go further under. I'm probably going to do it from this side of each car because I can get my arms in just enough to reach all 4 bolts for the Y pipe. So we're going to go up there, get the Y pipe off, and that'll be the full exhaust. I don't know, I keep calling this thing a Y pipe. It might be an H. I don't know. It's still shaped like a Y. It's just a fat Y. But yeah, we're going to go ahead, get that off, and we'll move on to getting the Z1 exhaust kind of lined up and mocked up. We do need to do a mock-up before we tighten things up because that one does use clamps to kind of tighten everything together. So I want to make sure everything is where it needs to be before I start tightening anything down. But I do want to make sure that I tighten things down properly just to be sure that I avoid any potential leaks. So let's go ahead and get that thing off. I keep forgetting to actually stop and grab the camera. I'm making progress. I'll show you guys where we are and why I'm like this. So let's get on this real quick. Ow. Alright, so the problem that I'm having is that I can't get the exhaust to line up properly because of this section of the bumper. It's like a support for the fiberglass, and it's made out of fiberglass. So I'm gonna take my oscillating tool and I'm gonna cut it at like an angle to try to make some space to clear for the can of the muffler. So yeah, that's why I'm wearing all of this, because I've heard that breathing in fiberglass and getting it in your eyes and stuff is, you know, detrimental. Like that could really mess you up. So if you're dealing with fiberglass, just be safe. This might be overkill, but whatever. I don't want to get it in my eyes. I know how it feels when it gets on your skin and you just feel like a crackhead and you're itching all over. So I'm going to go ahead, make this cut, and see if I can get the exhaust to sit the way I want it to. Because right now what's happening is that this side is fine. I just moved it back because I was trying to get it even with that side, but it can come out more. If I leave them even, that means this one would sit probably right here, and I'd like them to poke out just a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and make that cut, and I'll follow up after. Right, sorry if I'm muffled. I still have the mask on my face because I need to clean up all the fiberglass that I cut. And I'm not trying to breathe any of that dust in. But I was able to successfully cut that section of the bumper off. So now I was able to bring the muffler more forward, which is what I want. I wanted it to poke out a little bit more and not be so inside of the bumper. So now that that's pretty much set and everything's kind of in place loosely, I'm gonna go back to the front and get the Y pipe in place. So that way I can see where everything lands and start tightening things up. But otherwise, I think we're doing pretty good right now. All right, so the last thing left to do is gonna be to get the mufflers on now. We've got this Y pipe in. It took a little bit of time to get in because I made the mistake of over tightening one side and then the opposite side didn't want to line up or get where it needed to be. But right now, everything is in, everything's nice and tight. I used hand in some area because some spaces are a little tighter than others, but for the most part, everything I was able to hit with the impact wrench, so they're pretty snug. So next thing, like I said, is going to be to go to the back and get those muffler tips on. And once that's on, we'll come back and just make sure everything is nice and tight, just to double check. And then we can bring the car down and give it a start up and see how it sounds. All right, y'all, so finally got everything bolted up. I would not recommend this exhaust, and I'll tell you why. There's just too many separate joints that to get everything aligned is just a hassle and a half. At first, after I tightened everything up with the Y pipe and finished that up, came back here to get the mufflers on, and they were sitting like this far into the bumper. And I can't bring them any more forward at this connection because then the pipe is going to be exhausting through those little cuts that you can see there. Like I have to get the pipe in enough so that it's actually connected and the exhaust is coming out of the muffler, not through the sides back here. So that's one. So because I couldn't do all of that, I had to go back up to the front, loosen everything on the Y pipe. And once everything on the Y pipe was loose, I had to come back here and yank everything back as much as I could, and then knock the shorter merge piece of the Y pipe. I had to knock that backwards to give it some more space because too much of the two side pipes were inside of it. I mean, it is a learning curve because this is the first time I'm doing something with exhaust that's like this many pieces. But overall, fitment was a pain. The eBay exhaust was easier to fit on here than this was, and this was made for this car. But again, part of it being the issue with this bumper. Everything that I've seen with this exhaust has been with a factory bumper, and this merge here, like this lower, call it diffuser part of the bumper, hits at certain angles on the exhaust, which is why I had to trim that side out to give it some space to move a little bit more forward too. So essentially, this is how we look right now. They're just kind of barely poking out, but that's fine. I think that's just about where the other one was. I did go ahead and take the silencers out of them. The silencers are held in just with one screw right here, and you can see those here. So I did take them out because I do want to hear it at full volume before I decide whether or not I want to run those. Plus, they're also just kind of ugly. The only other thing I would say that I like more about the eBay exhaust, or whatever, the replica exhaust, is the tip size. It's a little bit taller, I think. At least visually to the eye, it looks like it's a bigger exhaust tip. But yeah, I mean, that's slightly negligible. I think overall it looks okay. It does look a little bit more aggressive because you see more of the exhaust pan, not just the tips, but you see the muffler and everything. But I'm gonna go ahead, get everything put away, get the car back on the ground, and then I'll go ahead and start it up to kind of see how everything is sounding. Alright, so I am probably gonna leave the car up on ramps because I do need to be somewhere. But as I give it just the slightest bit of gas, I'm trying not to rev it too much because it is cold. but I feel like, and I might be crazy, but I feel like I hear air, or it might just be a new rattle since there's no flex pipe on the Y pipe to kind of absorb some of that vibration. So I'm not exactly sure what it is, but here, see if you can hear it. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that is, so I'm gonna go back under maybe tomorrow morning or maybe later today and try to just double check that I tightened everything. I might spray some soapy water down there, see if any of the gaskets are kind of leaking a little bit, but that is it for now. Good morning, y'all. It is now the next day. I just finished going back under the car and kind of tightening everything again. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't leave anything loose to allow for any leaks, but everything is as tight as I could possibly get it to be. What I also did was take a piece of, I had extra gasket, so like flange gasket, and what I did was I folded it in half and kind of created a cushion. So one of the things, as I had time last night, that I was thinking about with that weird buzzing noise that sounded like a potential leak, is that the exhaust is sitting on that W kind of that W support that goes across the middle. And I'm wondering if, with the exhaust being more rigid now, if it's just kind of vibrating on that and making that buzzing noise. So I folded that gasket and I kind of sandwiched it between the exhaust and the subframe brace. And I'm hoping that kind of takes away some of that buzz. If not, I'm guessing it's probably just extra noise because of how rigid the exhaust is. The previous exhaust and like even ISR Y pipes and such typically have these flex pipe joints that kind of allow for a little bit more movement and a little bit of absorption of that like noise and vibration and, you know, that harshness that you get from having the rigidity of the pipes. This doesn't have that, so I'm assuming that that's part of what's causing that weird buzzing noise or whatever. Anyway, now that the car is down and off of the ramps, what I'm gonna do is actually go ahead and start it up and see what that cold start sounds like. I'll leave the mic back here with the camera and we'll see what kind of sound we get. The overall look of it, it took me a second to kind of like, but I'm liking it a little bit more and more as time passes with it. I wasn't sure I was gonna like this kind of angle thing that's going on, but it adds a little bit of aggressiveness to it. And I like that you can make out the cans because they're a little bit more visible. So that again adds to a little bit more of the aggressiveness. But let's go ahead and get this thing started up and see what we've got. So the idle in this thing is, to my ears, sounds a little quieter than the previous exhaust. It's a little bit higher in like the pitch or tone and a little bit more subtle. The HKS rep had more of like a deeper tone to it. So I'm curious to kind of take the car for a drive and see how it sounds. I don't have like a mount or anything that I can use to like put the mic back here, but if I can get some sound of the car driving, I'll add that in here. I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to hear this because I've got windows down to try to get some sound inside, but also it's bringing in all the wind noise. I'm going to drive a little bit, see if I can get a little bit of recording what the exhaust sounds like from inside the cabin. That's one thing I didn't see too much of when I was looking online, and maybe it will help y'all. I don't know if I've got it on mic, but by now you probably heard that it definitely sounds louder. It definitely brought back the trumpet sound because, like I said, there was no trumpeting from the HKS rep. If you want to get rid of trumpeting, then the way to go is definitely with one of those true dual exhausts. All right, guys, so it's been probably a little bit more than a month, probably more than that, even, since we initially installed this exhaust. I'm still a fan of the sound. I'm overall happy with it. I've gotten used to the slanted look, so I'm cool with it. That's whatever. The only thing I do still need to address is at the Y pipe, I do see water in the mornings after like a cold start on 2 spots. So I'm pretty sure that the Y pipe still has a poor connection somewhere. So I'm gonna get back under there at some point and try to tighten that up. But otherwise, everything else has been pretty good. I won't complain about anything with this exhaust other than, like I said, it's a bit of a pain in the butt to install. But other than that, guys, I appreciate you guys being here with me. I appreciate you guys being part of the channel. I'm gonna ask you guys to continue liking, subscribing, and commenting on these videos. But if you guys have any questions or any ideas or anything, any feedback, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And until next time, peace out and God bless you guys.